course, mourn, as any father would, any child would do that passed away, or any mother, or any parent, let's say. But David's mourning meant a lot to us because of the fact that Absalom was out to kill his own father to take over his kingdom. And so we find that, even though David had to remove himself from the presence of Absalom because of the threat to him and the war that was going on between David's army and Absalom's army that was taking place at the time, he still loved his son. Even though his son was trying to kill him, he still loved him. And he still cared for him. And so when he died, of course, he mourned for him. And as we get into the lesson today, we find that this mourning that he has done has prevented him from returning to Jerusalem to take right possession of his kingship there. And because some of the people, some of the nations of Israel had a problem with him returning to be the king. They thought maybe his other son should be the king instead. And his other son was looking to do that. So we see that the things that take place during this particular period of time are going to be instrumental in the outcome of the nation of Israel for many years to come. And as we look at the lesson today, this is entitled Return. I'd like to take just a few minutes. It's a little bit lengthy reading, but I believe if we read through the lesson to begin with, for the benefit of those who have not been here before, and for those of us who need to be reminded of what goes on, we're going to have a better understanding of what exactly is taking place. So if you will, does anybody need a book? If you will, let's look at page 52 in our booklet where it gives us some text reading. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 9 through 30. Like I said, it's a fairly lengthy reading. But let's very quickly see if we can go through it to give us kind of an overview of what goes on. Then we'll get into our questions. And all the people were in dispute throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "The king saved us from the hands of our enemies. He delivered us from the hand of the Philistines. And now he has fled from the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now, therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king?" So King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar, priests, saying, "Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the words of all Israel have come to the king to his very house? You are my brethren, you are my home, my bone and my flesh, and why then are you the last to bring back the king? And say to Amazah," and I have trouble with some of these names, believe me, "Are you not my bone and my flesh? God, do so to me, and more also, if you are not a commander of the army before me continually in the place of Joab." So he swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah, just as the heart of one man, so that they sent his word to the king, "Return, you and all your servants." Then the king returned and came to Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. And Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite, who was from Baal-Nurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and servant at the house of Saul, and his 15 sons, and his 20 servants with him, and they went over the Jordan before the king. And then a ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household, and to do what he thought good. Now Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan. And he said to the king, "Do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on the day that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore, here I am, first to come today of all the house of Joseph, to go down to meet my lord the king. But Abishai, the son of Jeremiah, answered and said, Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointing? And David said, What have I to do with you, you sons of Zerah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shimei, You shall not die. And the king swore to him. Now, Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. And he had not cared for his feet, or trimmed his mustache, or washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he returned in peace. So it was when he had come to Jerusalem and met the king, that the king said to him, Why do you not go with me? And he answered, My lord, O king, my servant deceived thee. For your servant said, I shall saddle a donkey for myself, and I will ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And he has slandered your servant to me, to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead for me, Lord the king. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing these pages. That you set your servant among those who eat at your table, and therefore, what right have I still to cry out any more to the king? So the king said to him, Why do you speak any more of your matters? I have said, you and Ziba, ride the lame. And Mephibosheth said to the king, Brother, let him take it off, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house. There's a whole lot of things that have gone on before that we need to kind of be aware of. And one of those things is this meeting between the king and Saul's grandson. And so as we get to our questions, we'll discuss that a little bit more. Let's look at the questions on page 60 and go back to that. If anyone has anything to say, just let me know, and we'll stop long enough to take on any comments or questions that might have. What did the people say about David before inviting him to return to Jerusalem? I could hear you.
Did he save them?
Did he save them? Okay. He did, you know. He saved them in battle. He saved them against the Philistines. What else did they say?
He fled because of Absalom.
That he fled because of Absalom. Now, what are they trying to say? Should he not come back and be king? Or should he not come back and be king?
They're divided because Absalom stole some of their armies.
Absalom had built up a great army against David, because he had stolen the hearts of many of the people of Israel. And they were following him. And as we've already mentioned, because of this, David had fled for his own life, right? He had pretty much deserted his kingship in order to save his own life. That's the feeling that some people had. Let's think about it in terms of today. If we had a president, a leader of our country, who stepped down, resigned as president, would we want to bring him back? What would be our view?
It depends.
Depends on what?
You don't understand why somebody steps down, you may feel like they step down because they are shirking their responsibilities. But when they are stepping down because they really understand their responsibilities.
Okay.
David,
Can't hear what
he preserved himself.
Just a minute, now. If you didn't hear what she said, we need to know why, the reason for a person stepping down. Did they shirk their responsibility, and why did they do it? And so, basically, we don't know the hearts of other people. And I think that's one of the problems with the division that was going on between the children of Israel, especially the tribes, Judah and Benjamin and others that are mentioned here. But the reason why David left was what reason? Why did he leave? Besides the threat to himself. You think he had other problems or other things that caused him to leave? What about his love for Absalom? I'm sure that played a big part in it, right? He didn't kill his son. That wasn't the purpose, And we see all through Scripture that there were times when a battle arose between the nations, between one country or one nation and another nation, or in this case, one family member and another family member, that there were going to be times when death is going to take place. You see, what happened between Saul and David? When David was appointed, when David was chosen to be the next king, what was Saul's reaction? Get rid of him, right? Now here, David's own son has rebelled against him. And so the reaction is, one's going to have to overcome the other. What was David's reaction to it? What did he do?
Well, he fled, but he still loved.
He fled, but he still loved Absalom. And, we don't know what David was thinking. We don't know what was in his mind. But his love for his son was very strong, right? And I'm sure that he had hopes that they could settle this thing without all the bloodshed. And we see this happen again a little bit later too. Number 2, whom did David send to speak to the elders of Judah? What do you suppose he sent the priests to speak to them? They were going to speak for him, right? They were prominent. They were leaders of the nations, religious leaders of the time, and they were going to speak to the elders, right? The elders of Israel, the elders of Judah particularly.
Yeah, David was always concerned about the will of God. It wasn't about the will for him to return.
Right. If you didn't hear what Earl was saying, he said, you know, David was always concerned with the will of God. And the will of God was, you know, very prominent in his decision making, I'm sure. So, if the people didn't want him to return, he wasn't going to return, right? He had to make sure that he had the support of all the nation of Israel, or primarily all the people of Israel, before his return to reclaim his kingship. So, in so doing, if the people of Judah, which was pretty much the leader of the nation of Israel at this time, if they didn't agree, is that going to be a problem? It's going to be a problem, right? And, you know, that I'm sure had a lot to do with it. Number 3, whom did David invite to replace Joab as commander of the army? Joab, brother. Massa. Why did he choose him?
Because Joab is the one that killed.
Joab was the one that killed Absalom, right? Or basically. So why did he choose him?
Wasn't Joab also wanting another one of his sons to be king instead of David?
Right. Joab had ulterior motives in the death of Absalom. That was to put someone else in his position as king, take over the nation. So, but who was Massa?
He thought that Amasa would win people over because he had been in that role of Absalom's army.
Yeah.
So he thought that would be the key.
Right. Massa was the commander-in-chief of Absalom's army, right? Am I mistaken?
1725.
So, what do you do if you want to make friends of your enemies?
He's just like our president, putting all these people in his cabinet.
Right. Yeah. If you've got somebody that's against you, you give them a job, right? Give them a job, make them your friend. Also, you got to remember now that Absalom's followers, they're still enemies of David. So how do you make followers of Absalom turn to your side?
Earn their trust.
You earn their trust. You take the commander-in-chief and you make a friend from him, make a friend to him. Now, are we not shown to do the same thing? If we make friends of our enemies, then do their friends not become our friends as well? You know, in the world today, and I've thought about this many times, why do we have so many nations at war with each other? Why can't we all be friends? Why can't each nation work to help other nations? So that everybody can live peacefully.
We disagree.
What do you
We
say?
disagree, and we don't love God and follow His word as all of us should.
Yeah. Greed, our lack of love for each other, which means our lack of love for God, and basically lack of love for ourselves, right? Because as we go through the world today, we find that some people just want more and more and more power. More power, higher they think they are than the other people. Well, what does the Bible teach us?
Love one another.
Love one another, to be good to one another, to care for one another. Our pride, it overrules a lot. And remember, the devil's working. He's continually working to divide us. And that's one of the things we need to keep utmost in our mind. The division that occurs between people is just another way that the devil uses to keep us at odds with each other.
I've been here studying this lesson. I don't know if I can say it right, but David loved his son so much. Just actually, it indicates that Absalom was his favorite. But we love our children so much, and if we love other people's children, we will gain their respect and their love. And in so doing, we can also help to bring their children closer to God. And see, some of these people, they were so interested in power that it didn't matter who they stepped on and their way up.
Right. You know, it's awful that families, in this case, you know, and I've seen it in other families as well, they think that they have, you know, certain members of the family feel like that they are due more than others in the family. I'm sure you've all heard of families that got torn completely apart because one person in the family felt like that they were privileged to a point where, you know, they should receive all the inheritance, let's say, from their parents. And the rest of their siblings get nothing.
And do they ask themselves, is this worth more than losing my family? No, it's not.
It's not worth it, right?
There's that word that's in, I don't know, it's in the street, means deserves.
Reserved.
We all get to that point, we think, I deserve this from my spouse, I deserve this from my parent, I deserve this from whoever, and if we stop and really reflect, we don't deserve anything, we have gotten a lot more than we deserve already.
You know, think about it. God gives blessings to each one of us. Do we deserve them? He gives us what He thinks we deserve, right? Not always. That was a trick question. Do we get what we deserve from God? Not very often, right?
And sometimes I'm thankful He doesn't give me what I deserve.
All right.
Well, if we accept it, we get a lot more than we deserve. We get heaven.
We get a lot more from God than we deserve.
If we accept.
if we accept his word. The idea here is that here, David has placed himself, he's kind of placed himself in this position because of his actions. And that's one of the things that we have to remember, that it's our actions that puts us in the position that we're in, right? If we're in a position that's really devastating and going to cost us our salvation, who put us there?
Ourselves.
We did. It's our fault.
But when we acknowledge that, it hurts our pride.
Yeah, it does. It hurts our pride. It hurts everybody. But the whole point is that that's the one thing that we need to keep most and foremost in our mind, is what I am doing at this point in time going to cost me my soul. And I'm sure that through all the things that are happening here, David has that thought in mind many times. How did I get in this position? Why am I out here hiding in the caves and so forth? That he had to do many times. And I'm sure the thought was, it's because I have turned away from God. I have made decisions that I shouldn't have made.
As a father, I hope he's considering soul action as well.
Yeah. You know, as a father, I'm sure he was concerned about his son. In our lesson text on page 57, I want to look back at 2 Samuel chapter 16, verses 11 through 12. 11 through 12. It says, "See how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjamite," and we're talking about Shemiah here, and we'll get back to him in just a moment, says, "Let him alone and let him curse, for so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord may repay me with good for his cursing this day." Now, remember when I was reading a few moments ago, we talked about this Shemai, or I'm not sure how you pronounce that word, that name, but he was the son of Gera, he was a Benjamite, and he came to David to meet him as he was crossing over the river into Jordan, and he reminds him, he says, "Well, I came to you before and I cursed you and all these things." And go back, we won't take time in our lesson today, we'll go back, if you can, go back and read chapter 16 there, and it tells you the whole story about what took place there. But at that time, David had mercy on this man. Even though he cursed the king, which was something that usually caused death to the person, it did. Because he, not only did he curse the king, but he cursed God's anointed one. And some of the religious leaders at the time said he ought to be put to death because of this. And David, at that particular point in time, spared him. Now he comes back to David, he reminds David of what he had done, and he's told again that he should put this man to death. But what did that man do when he came back to David? He asked for forgiveness again, right? He said, "I've sinned against you, and I did these things." And so, once again, David says, "No problem. You're not going to die. At least not this day." Now, we'll get into that later on in our lesson. If we go on through this, we'll find out that things change as time goes on, as they always do. But anyway, let's go back to our questions here. Question 4, we've already answered. They met David as he was crossing the Jordan, and this Shemiah, which we talked about already, said he fell down before David and asked for forgiveness. David gave it. Question 6, what individual refused to care for himself while David was away from Jerusalem? Now, I have real trouble pronouncing that name. But anyway, it's Saul's grandson. Now, David has met with this man before. He's talked to this man before. He's even done something that most people would never think of doing, probably. He invited this man into the palace to sit down and eat meals with him. Not only that, but all of Saul's property, the land that Saul had, was to be divided up between this man and one of Saul's servants, right? And so David had already told him, says, I got no problem with you. I got no problem with you taking over the land that Saul possessed. It's yours. He says, I'm not going to take any of it when he became king. He refused to take Saul's property, which most kings would have done at that particular point in time. He said, no, he said, it all belongs to you. He's talking about this grandson. He says, not only does it belong to you, but you're welcome to come and eat with me. You're welcome to come and reside in my palace, basically. So this is another case where David has made friends who was supposed to be his enemy. So, what did David resolve? How did David resolve the conflict between Ziba and Bathsheba? Now, this grandson of Saul's, he comes to David and he says, what about Ziba? He says, he deceived me, right? He says, he deceived me and told me things that were not true about you, David. David says, so we see, and of course, David had asked him, said, why didn't you follow me? He said, well, I was deceived by my servant. He deceived me. But me, I am your servant. It came to a point where he was even physically unable to follow David, that he was going to get on the donkey and ride to David. And of course, his servant deceived him. Getting close to the end of our time, what do you think David attempted to secure support from the people before returning to Jerusalem? Probably would have done him good for him to come back to Jerusalem if he didn't have the support. And we talked about that earlier. Question number 2, what can we learn about mercy in this passage? What do we learn about mercy?
If you don't forgive people, you won't be forgiving yourself.
Okay. We receive mercy when we extend mercy, right? Back to that old golden rule, do unto others as others as you would have them do unto you, not as they do to you. All right. You may not get it. 16. And question number 3, we'll very quickly go through that. What can we learn from conflict resolution? How did David resolve the conflict? Forgiveness, right? He forgave them for what they had done to him, or what, the problems that were there. Forgive those who sin against you, because God forgives you the sins Thank you for your attention and your comments.